Welcome to Film Strip. These podcasts are spoiler-filled as we discuss the plots, characters, and themes of the films in review. All content used or discussed in these podcast episodes is the property of the respective owners and used under the Fair Use Act, Section 504(c)(2), Title 17.
Welcome to Film Strip. I'm Jay.
I'm Ron.
And since it's March Madness season, we decided it was finally time to review Blue Chips, starring Nick Nolte, Mary McDonald, Ed O'Neill, J.T. Walsh, Alfre Woodard, Bob Cousy, Robert Wool, Louis Gossett Jr., Penny Hardaway, Matt Nover, and Shaquille O'Neal, with cameos from Jerry Tarkanian, Rick Pitino, Jim Boeheim, and Bobby Knight. Written by Ron Shelton of Bull Durham fame and directed by William Friedkin. Yes, the Exorcist guy. We'll talk about that. Released in 1994 on a $35 million budget. Did not make a splash at the box office, Ron. But I saw this opening weekend. I'll just go ahead and say it. I saw the advertisements for it. And at the time, I was in awe of everything Shaquille O'Neal. I was not a fan of his per se, but I was just blown away by this larger-than-life mass that could play basketball like that. And I thought, well, this looks fun. You know, I saw the program. I like that. I'll watch this. And so I went and saw it. And only this time did it dawn on me that William Friedkin directed this basketball movie where Nick Nolte basically does a Bobby Knight impression for, an hour and a half.
Do you think it was intimidating for Nick Nolte to do his Bobby Knight impression in front of actual Bobby Knight?
Oh, even worse. Like, of course, as usual, Friedkin, makes you dive in. He made Nolte learn how to coach, and he had to coach like pickup games against Bobby Knight's squad. And Bobby Knight being Bobby Knight, the end game is like parts of two games that they played together, and Knight's squad beat the hell out of Nolte's squad both times.
Oh, I mean, that's not a huge surprise, but I imagine that Shaq and Penny weren't exactly playing in those pickup games.
Yeah. Well, they were in some of it. And what's funny about this, and I didn't know this, man, until later, because I remember Shaq and Penny as part of that Magic run, the Orlando Magic that made the finals run, and they beat Jordan when he came back and all that stuff. But the reason the Orlando Magic drafted Penny Hardaway was because Shaquille O'Neal met him on this set and said, no, this guy can ball. So they ended up making trades and got Penny Hardaway. It's the craziest thing I've ever heard of.
That's crazy.
It's just the kind of like sway that Shaq had even then. And, he's got so much now too, but like apparently he was such a big deal to them that they were like, yes, Shaq, whatever you want in Orlando, we'll get you your point guard.
That's not a surprise. I had a Shaq Orlando Magic jersey.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I had a Shaq Team USA jersey.
Oh, nice. My wife was a big Shaquille fan. So on our honeymoon, we stayed in New Orleans before hitting the cruise. And we were trying to think of things to do in New Orleans. And obviously there's always lots of things to do, but like, let's do something that's like not entirely crazy. And she found out the Miami Heat were in town playing the then New Orleans Hornets, where Chris Paul was on the Hornets team and Shaq was on that Heat team. And we went and saw Shaq and the Heat just absolutely destroy the Hornets that night in New Orleans. But no, I remember those when this came out, and I like basketball. It's the sport I actually played when I was a kid growing up, and I wasn't any good at it, but I liked it, and I like watching basketball. And again, it's kind of fun to tie in some of these sort of sports movies around the time of year when things are happening. As we're recording this and releasing it, the brackets are out, so you're either already filling one out, or you've already filled out a dozen and you're waiting for them to crash or whatever. But it's kind of an American pastime this time of year just to get into college basketball in a big way.
Yeah, it's also apparently the most popular week to get a vasectomy, because you get to sit home with a bag of ice on your crotch and watch basketball for 3 days.
I've not heard that, though. I'm surprised like William Friedkin didn't offer up free vasectomies for everybody going to watch the movie or some nonsense, because his insanity on sets is notorious at this point, and I think by the mid-90s had put him in where this was the kind of movie he could do at this stage.
Now, would you say that Billy Friedkin is the Bobby Knight of directors?
I think anytime you shoot a gun off on set to get people's attention you're part of the problem. And then you nearly break Ellen Burstyn's back slinging her across a room, and The Exorcist, a room that, by the way, you basically build inside of a refrigerator and give everyone the flu, including Max von Sydow and everyone else on that set. Yeah, you're out there. But what's wild, man, is, like I said, he made Nolte learn how to coach. And Nolte said like he went through like coaching boot camp so that when he talked, and you see him in a few scenes like at practice and stuff, and he's doing stuff, he actually learned how to do that so that when he was talking like real coaches. He said he didn't learn it so much from the head coaches that he hung out with. It was all the assistants, because those were the guys that were usually doing that kind of chatter. But he learned a lot of that, and then he decided just to sort of amp all the antics up to 11, like kicking a basketball had been somebody else's deal and other things. But I think I at this point was really into any kind of movie that I felt like was sort of taking what was real life and then putting it in the forefront. And at this point, and this is sort of funny to talk about in 2024 because the organization couldn't be more feckless now than it ever has been. But the NCAA coming after you was like a big deal, man. Like you were going down and going down hard. And you also had reporters who basically worked for the NCAA to do their work for them to uncover all the rampant cheating that was going on in college athletics.
Oh, you don't have to tell me. Kentucky was just coming off of the the scandal involving what's his name, Sean Kemp, the recruitment of Sean Kemp and all of our various bagmen and the famous FedEx envelope full of cash.
Yeah.
But man, it was really interesting to see Rick Pitino in this. Talk about a blast from the past. But but the funniest thing to me is something we'll probably get into it a little bit later. But it's interesting. This whole movie is geared about cheating, and the morality of college basketball. And you've got both Rick Pitino and
Tarkanian,
Jerry Tarkanian in there.
Yeah, exactly.
And also, let's be honest, some of it probably got stuck on Jim Boeheim. Some of it probably none of it got stuck on Bobby Knight, but Bobby Knight was his own problem.
Yeah, he had his own issues for sure. But things I didn't know. I didn't know Ron Shelton wrote this. I never paid attention to that. But again, he's done Bull Durham, a lot of other sort of sports themed movies and things, and sort of finding the drama in the sports. And the idea here for Friedkin that he wanted to do, because he felt like, and he said it even afterward, that basketball is one of the hardest sports to shoot because there's no way to make it realistic in a movie, because if you're watching real basketball, like it moves, nowadays in particular, it moves really fast. But even then, man, and really in the 90s too, you're talking about the epitome of people running actual basketball offenses and defenses. There's a lot of shift, there's a lot of motion, there's a lot of throwing the ball around and stuff. It's not what I think Kobe Bryant once called, like nowadays it's accidental basketball, like dudes just going down the court and stuff happening. But back in those days, man, you were running real ball, and especially in college. And this was the heyday of, again, everyone becoming aware of there's all these people getting caught cheating, but is it really cheating? And I mean, we can have that debate forever, I think. And it looks like that debate is over now because we've just turned money, football and basketball into just semi-pro sports at this point. But then these days, it was a big deal when the NCAA was going to come and investigate your coach. And, there were programs that held up their coach as being this bastion of doing it the right way and all this kind of stuff. And so I don't know, man, I always found humor in that. And again, in this point in the 90s, I was starting to do a lot of journalism work and reading a lot more and paying attention to like the sports reporters and, all those kind of people. And it was a time when the Ed O'Neill character in particular, who's just called Ed in the movie, real creative, by the way, those guys, like he was like the proto Pat Forty, like those guys, those investigative reporters that would drop the bomb on some program that he'd been after for years.
Yeah, that's and those people are still out there, but like now, what can you actually drop the bomb on anybody for anymore? I mean, honestly, the NCAA is just trying to hold on by the skin of its teeth to survive as an organization.
Yeah.
They're not really going to be going. I mean, if North Carolina got away with all those fake classes that students were taking and they still got to keep their national championship and all those wins, nobody's going to care about anything.
Yeah, I don't think anybody cares about it. Yeah, Kansas hoisted a trophy in a year when they were definitely cheating and nobody cared. Like cheating by the rules, by the way.
Louisville was probably the last time that the NCAA is going to come after a school that hard. And
Yeah.
Louisville had to have the FBI involved. There had to be like blackmail. There had to be
Yeah.
underage girls and hookers, and
Wasn't there like Rick Pitino making out with a woman in an Applebee's too? Wasn't that part of that?
it was not Applebee's. He's way too classy for that. It's
Okay.
Porcini.
Okay.
It's actually a very expensive Italian restaurant in town that's really good.
Okay.
At
Okay.
least people who have money tell me that it's very good. And it was more than making out, at least on Rick's part, if you
Yeah.
believe him. Uh,
Yeah, I have no reason. I mean, the devil rarely lies completely. So, uh,
and boy, are there some stories about Rick Pitino in this town that I could tell that I will not tell on this podcast because I'm sure he has way more lawyers than me. But once we're done recording, Jay, I got some
oh,
bits to tid,
I,
tids to bit, something like that.
I can't wait till Film Strip After Dark, as we say here on the show. But yeah, I mean,
It's casual libel night here on Film Strip.
when did you first see Blue Chips though? This isn't your first time seeing this, Hudson?
Oh no, this was always on HBO or Showtime, so I've watched it dozens of times, just mostly for the basketball scenes
Yeah,
because those were always really great, and I was like, Shaq is a really charming dude, a good, a fairly decent like potential for an actor.
yeah,
If nothing else, he's got screen presence, and that's
yeah.
something that most of the other basketball players in the NBA or anywhere else don't have.
No, he had
Um,
charisma for days. He still does, and that's why he's still popular.
like imagine how good like Space Jam would have been if it had been Shaq
Oh,
instead of the absolute black hole of charisma that is Michael Jordan.
or you mean the more newer version of it? Because I kind of like the first Space Jam, but the remake of Space Jam is awful.
The first one was good despite Michael Jordan. The second one is not something I really. It's not for me.
Yeah.
Although I do like the idea of watching the Looney Tunes uh, hanging out with the Droogs from
Clockwork
Clockwork
Orange.
Orange and the nuns from Ken Russell's oh, what's the name of that movie? Oh, there's this Ken Russell movie about nuns that all go crazy and have like orgies in a convent.
Oh man, I
The
missed that one.
Devils. The
Okay.
Devils. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's actually like that description really undersells it because it's super creepy and there's lots of weird shit happening and like Oliver Reed's there.
Okay. Now I'm in. So at that point.
Yeah, all Oliver Reed not quite at his sweatiest, but like he's definitely building up. He's midway between like young handsome Oliver Reed and like sweaty '80s Oliver Reed.
Oh, that's perfect. No, that actually does sound like something that's a stay tuned on this show for sure. So, yeah, I'll say this, man, about Shaq is again, he's got all the charisma in the world, and Michael Jordan is just super intense. But there's no denying like how friggin' popular he was. When we did Space Jam back in the day, Lindsay and I did it. He was unreal popular, and he actually let his guard down a little bit in that movie to have a little fun. But I give a lot of that credit to the Looney Tunes and the people that are behind that knew to put all the comedy in their world and then let him just do the basketball stuff. Where the new Space Jam thing is, I don't know, some sort of Will Smith nepotism thing going on too, but like not with actual LeBron's kids. It's kind of weird. I don't know. It's and because Bronny's like a real player, but they got some other dude in there to play him, so it's very strange. But
I mean, Bronny plays basketball, but let's not call him a basketball player.
well, yeah, I mean, my friends that at a school he played at here in the Southeast did say that they found it humorous that national media thought that the students were lining up to see Bronny play when they were actually lining up to watch the home team play. That is rather popular, but yeah, that's another day on Donahue, so as it were. But I saw this one when it came out in theaters. Like I say, I've seen it a few times, and I think I have the VHS somewhere. I ended up catching it on streaming to watch it for this review, but seen it several times. But it's been a while. It's been a while since I went back and revisited this, and now it's funny to think about. Shaq is this television presence and all this stuff, and Penny Hardaway's. Well, if the NCAA had any teeth, he would be in trouble in Memphis, but they don't anymore. So he's currently coaching up there. We'll see how long that still lasts. But the other people I didn't realize Matt Nover was like an actual basketball player. I kind of believe that he is because he looks like one, but I'd never heard of him. But apparently he played in the NBA for half a minute and played overseas some, and then was big in college. And then to see all the other faces that sort of roll through here, because this was kind of wild. I dropped that huge cast list, but like Robert Wool and Lou Gossett Jr. have like 2 scenes, but you never forget them, and then Mary McDonnell is doing this whole ex-wife with the heart of gold thing. And I don't know, to me, the most memorable person outside of the basketball players in this was JT Walsh. And we're going to have to talk about him a little bit, but that may be one of my favorite character actors of the 90s up through the 2000s, because that dude chews scenery every time he's in a movie.
Yeah, he's definitely one of the highlights, I think, of the thing. Just because he's such a sleazy that guy.
Yeah.
And another one of those people that showed up that I really liked was Jim Beaver, a very young Jim Beaver playing Ricky's dad.
Yes.
Who
Yes.
is mostly familiar to people who like Supernatural or people who like Deadwood.
Yeah.
He's amazing on Deadwood. I've never seen a minute of Supernatural, and I have no interest in it. But he's one of my favorite characters on Deadwood, and he has some of the best. He has one of the best character arcs, and but no spoilers for what a 20-something-year-old HBO show.
Yeah, one of these days I'm going to get around to watching that. Everybody's talked it up so much, but that, and I've only ever seen like a few bits of Supernatural, so I'm not as versed in that as I am other shows of that ilk. But everyone tells me Deadwood's incredible and I should watch it, but I just haven't done it.
Well, if you ever want to have another podcast that lasts like 20 years, the Supernatural cast is a good choice.
Yeah, that one. There's a reason Brian and I did 1 season of Angel, and we're like, yeah, that's okay. So, like, we like that show, but I don't know that I ever want to do another episodic TV show like that. But yeah, well, I guess it's time to get into the movie here, Ron. Let me throw out let me do the plot summary this time. Let's see if I can still shoot from the arc here a little bit. So, Coach Pete Bell, played by Nick Nolte, is a legendary Western University coach, having won multiple national titles, coached legions of successful players, and that success allows him a lot of leeway to berate the refs, the press, and run things the way he sees fit. Bell says he's incapable of cheating because, one, if he gets caught, he's done in college coaching, because at that time the governing bodies of the sport take it very seriously, and two, he might not get caught, and his conscience wouldn't let him deal with it. But his Western Dolphins aren't what they used to be. His coaches have gotten by not hustling on the recruiting trail, and after his first losing season, his staff meets a recruiting guru from a leading shoe company who turns them on to 2 blue chip recruits, Midwestern power forward Ricky Rowe and Chicago-based superstar point guard Butch McRae. Bill is even tipped off to a raw phenom in South Louisiana, a 7-foot monster called Neon Bedeau, played by Shaquille O'Neal. Bell learns in his meetings with the players, and really from their parents and anybody else around them, there's a price to pay for their services, except for Neon, who doesn't seem to care about anything. He turns to the notoriously obnoxious, quote, friend of the program, end quote, Happy Kuykendall, played by the awesome JT Walsh, even though his AD and ex-wife, who are still friends with him, warn him about the dangers of this liaison. Happy and his friends meet the needs of the blue chippers and even try buying off Neon, who isn't interested. But, Neon does ultimately need Jenny's help, or at least to call him out on his BS, to pass the entrance exams, which, as we all know, are culturally biased. Bell's new team has all the makings of a real championship contender, and everyone's excited. But dogged local reporter Ed, that's it, Ed O'Neill, Ed is turning over every rock like a good institutional mouthpiece should to try to bust Bell, who routinely angers him by bringing up an alleged point shaving scandal that involves a senior point guard, Tony, who subsequently needs to learn about safe sex and how to pass a class on television at the same time. Bell sees more and more of Happy and his friends of the program in the lives of his new superstars and angrily confronts him. And Happy lets him know that the friends of the program have their hands in all the athletics at Western and that the point shaving was real, which brings to question, how in the world does Bob Cousy still have a job? But we'll get back to that in a minute. That's AD. Bell confronts Tony and learns the truth, and he goes to Jenny, and she shuts him out because he lied to her about Tony and about cheating to buy the new players. First game of the new season arrives as a big matchup against Bobby Knight and the Indiana Hoosiers. And the game is tight, but the Dolphins' new trio of stars prove too much as they prevail in front of a full crowd. Bell's conscience, though, gets the best of him, and he confesses in the post-game press conference to everything and quits on the spot. The rules committee hammers Western with a 3-year ban. Ricky goes back to his family farm. Butch and Neon bail on school after a year to go star in the NBA. And Bell takes a high school coaching job in a small town as credits roll. And that's pretty well the straight-through line of Blue Chips. It's a lot of vignettes, this movie, the way it's put together. That's what I kind of wanted to get your impression of it is. It feels like 4 seasons of a TV show compressed into about 125 minutes.
Yeah, it's definitely a what I like to call a movie loaf, rather than having a very, specific singular plot. It's like here's a bunch of things that are kind of happening, and it all leads to the big climactic moment, but it's not really put together. It's like you could taste the individual elements as you go through the movie loaf. It's like here's some onions of the romantic comedy bit where he's trying to get back with his ex-wife. Here's a little tomato sauce that's got Shaq Duncan on Fools. Here's the meat, and it's Nick Nolte, Bobby Knighting his way through the West Coast. Here's some paprika. That's little cameos from coaches you might know or players you might remember if you are like me and watched Indiana a bunch.
Yeah. The side salad's definitely the Alfre Woodard new house, new job, new situation. Like she is a hustler, no doubt in this movie.
Oh, 100%. And that's the little bits of green pepper you sometimes get in meatloaf.
Oh, I think that's definitely Lou Gossett Jr., who does this whole preacher's monologue as a school principal and winks at all these other coaches and lets Bell in the room to talk about Butch that they've watched in like the dungiest gym ever in Chicago play basketball. Big gym for a high school gym, though, even a Catholic high school, I would say. So these are usually much smaller, but
probably not in Chicago. And definitely not around here. We've got there's some big gyms in Indiana too, but
yeah,
Indiana
well,
is also
that I can believe. It just that one was supposed to be like on the bad side of town, like all that. I'm like, they wouldn't have money unless that facility is also like the volleyball court, the gymnastics court, the indoor track. Like maybe it is, and I just didn't see all of it. But I don't know. I'm with you though, man. The way this movie works is it is like all these little stories that are interconnected, and they're all like Bell's the center of it, and then these are all the spider webs around him. And as Friedkin tends to do with movies, he likes to just throw us in. And I love how he throws us in their last 2 games of the season. And the assistant coaches are all in there and they're kind of quietly talking to the guys. And, they're maybe going, you're going to flex here and look for the 3 on this side, or, whatever they're trying to talk about. And then he comes in and Nick Nolte just unloads on these people. And knowing Friedkin, like he probably had to do it like 20 times. And just to keep the energy up at that point. Because, I mean, at this point, Nick Nolte's pushing 50 in this movie. And he's really like pumping out a lot of wattage for this movie.
Yeah, and that's definitely Nick Nolte's thing, right? He's always seemed to me as like a very high energy type of actor, and it seems like he would have some head clashes with William Friedkin over about how things are done, but I feel like that also kind of helps the performance in a way, especially if he's doing a bunch of takes, because it kind of sucks the life out of him. So he's this exhausted, like struggling basketball coach, and not just like I'm Nick Nolte.
Yeah, exactly. He's not just doing the full Nolte, and it's Nolte like channeling through the caricature of Bobby Knight. And I think Bobby Knight is known for a lot of his tirades and and all those things, and some of them better than others. But when you really boil it down, like he didn't have that many of those. Like Bobby Knight's best stuff was when he was just cold and would just eviscerate people with his use of the vocabulary and stuff. He wasn't one of those guys that I always felt like just lost it. I think you see Bobby Knight in this movie where he just kind of goes like, yeah, you know what you're talking about. Like that's more what Bobby Knight was really like. Nick Nolte is just like on 11 the whole time. And it's funny though, because I'm watching it and I look through all the behind the scenes stuff I can find or whatever. And Nolte just says he just pulled from a lot of different people to try to come up with this. And in no time could I get him to admit that, like Al Pacino's character in Heat, that his coach character was secretly on cocaine, because the man looks like he's coked, or at least on a coke binge the whole time, because he's sweaty and just yelling and just up and down so quickly.
Sweaty and yelling, a lot of mood swings, always looks a little disheveled.
Yeah.
The moment he takes that sweater off, it's just going to be drenched in sweat. It's going to be like a V-neck of sweat where that sweater's been on him this whole game. And I kept waiting for at least one scene where he would take that sweater off after a game and just be like drenched.
Well, he does come out of the
Never.
shower that one game and sits down with Bob Cousy after he kicks the basketball or whatever. And he's just, they're having that little heart to heart or whatever. He's like, well, I don't know if I can take this much anymore. And you can tell he just sat in the hottest shower possible to try to decompress from everything. And you go to his apartment, and his apartment looks like the drug dealer's apartment. Right? There's a chair and a VCR and a bunch of tapes stacked up so that he can watch game film at home.
Yeah, there's no way a basketball coach would live in that kind of apartment. Not for a major West Coast university with multiple national championships. I don't care how divorced this guy is.
Well, it looked like Jenny got the house, is what I was going to say.
Yeah,
it's
but
a pretty
they're gonna,
sweet pad.
Yeah, but they would twist his arm to get him out of the bachelor arms and into at least a decent penthouse.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is supposed to be, I know it's called Western University, but you look at the color scheme and everything. This is UCLA, right? Like, that's what this is supposed to be.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, if the program, if that football team, if Eastern, Wolves or Eastern State Wolves was basically FSU or Florida State, then this is the other end of the country. This is UCLA.
Yeah, they've got a tradition of winning, and this was back in the 90s when their football program was pretty good.
Yeah, they were good. This is Troy Aikman's days, all those guys like that. Yeah, so
and
I
they still dominate like Olympic sports. So
yes,
that all rings true.
Yeah, that's what I say. Like, and you look around the campus, like it's shot on USC's campus apparently, which is kind of funny. Because UCLA is a little more urban, I think, but USC's is pretty. So they had to like work to get all the colors, they said, on USC's campus because USC was really upset about all that powder blue and gold running around. They weren't having that.
Yeah, but I imagine once they realized, oh wait, it's going to make out like our biggest rivals are cheaters.
Yeah, that probably was the selling
Okay,
point.
well,
it's also why UCLA did not want anything to do with this. Because why admit what everyone already knows? But yeah, I think that's what's wild here is, again, they throw us into this. It's the end of the season, and you watch these guys and like his team. And, I like basketball, and I've liked basketball teams too, where I really liked the team, but man, they just weren't any friggin' good, and like they play hard and they just get beat. And you feel for those guys because you can tell like they've got one star. It's the Tony guy who can't pass TV and makes questionable personal choices, as we'll learn. But like they don't have anybody else that's any good on that team. Like, and in the 90s, like this wasn't a thing where you could just one and done guys. That was before that happened, right? So this is right before those rules really kicked into gear. And I think it was maybe around this time, which is how they explained the two guys bailing after a year. But it was different than like you used to when you watch college basketball, you watch guys for 3 or 4 years and get to watch them mature and develop and stuff. And it's tough when your team is just getting their teeth kicked in the whole time. But what's wild is that they try to play off in this is that if the program is struggling in some way, and Ron, they're a 14-15 team, and the house is packed. Like the place is jammed, man.
Yeah, they and apparently they were mediocre for the 3 seasons before that.
Yeah,
because they're talking about what was it, 18-14 or something.
Yeah, they hadn't had a losing season yet, but they hadn't been to the tournament in 3 years. So
yeah, they haven't had a losing season, but they've had a lot of mediocre 500 ball, and there's no way those stands would be that packed with people.
Yeah,
I mean, just look at how terrible the University of Louisville's been this year, and that place they're lucky to get 5,000 people in there right now.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. This is the one thing. It's one thing that bothered me about this. I know why they want to set it on the West Coast because it's got to be like that's one of the things that they can hide the cheaty recruiting from. It's like, oh, come to California. It's all great, whatever. But like this would play a lot more if it was in a small town, like in the Southeast or out in the Midwest or something where there's nothing else to do. In LA, there's plenty to do. Like these kids are not just going to show up to watch basketball on a Tuesday night if the team sucks. And that's why I was like, I don't know. I get why they did it, but it was one of those things that I'm like, you could have just said it anywhere. You could have said it back east too, and people would have bought it.
Yeah, or like upper Midwest, like Directional State University or something. You probably couldn't use a real state name, but you could use
I think it had to be something that was like recognizable brand wise, but there were plenty of Midwest. Like you could have done fake Indiana, and people would have bought it,
Yeah.
Indianapolis State or something like that.
Eastern Plains University.
Yeah, one of those, right? Yeah. And you could talk about you could also lay out the whole foo academics and all that stuff. It could have been Nebraska, whatever you want it to be. But it was just one of those things that I picked up on that I thought was kind of funny about this. But we watch Bell, and what I love is you watch him with Bob Cousy, and he's talking about all this. I can't cheat. I can't do all this stuff because what if I don't get caught with all this stuff? I like that scene, but to me, it's undercut by like two scenes later. He's basically hearing from the shoe agent from Reebok or what Puma or whatever, like how to cheat and get away with it. Like Robert Wool's telling him how to do it.
Yeah, Gazelle, which is a great fake shoe company name. But it's never a surprise to see Robert Wool show up in a sports movie. This
Right?
dude is more of a jock sniffer than Stephen A. Smith. Like he's gonna if you're gonna do a sports movie, you gotta like post his picture up and have guards keep him out, or otherwise he's gonna show up.
So that's the one thing that was missing from this. I think was missing from any of these, like the era of this sports movie, is before they started to get the sports personalities to be a part of the movie. Like they've got some interspersed like sports centery people, but they're just generic Midwestern white people, to talk. Like they're not anybody I would know. They didn't have any of the big names on there to talk about basketball or anything. They have Dickie V or anybody like that pop by to do that. I mean, I think he has like a little pop in or something, but you don't have the main people like doing the critique as the Greek chorus or whatever to lead us all through, not like you would nowadays. And I think 90s era sports movies, it was before they started to get those people in to do that stuff. Like you watch a movie nowadays that was out a few years ago, like Draft Day with Kevin Costner, and it's just littered with all the ESPN NFL Network draft people. Like they're all over that damn thing, even though no, it's just ridiculous. They're all through it. This one doesn't have anything like that, and I kind of miss that authenticity piece of it.
Yeah, I feel like if they could get legit baseball announcers for The Naked Gun, they can get legit basketball announcers for this movie. I mean, although I'm not really sure who else was more recognizable than Dick Vitale in '94.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, he's pretty big, but again, you don't have
But
him doing the commentary part.
But would people have recognized like, Keith Olbermann or
Yeah, I think so. In the 90s, man, Sports Center was a big deal.
Craig Kilborn?
Yeah, I think
Those
those
guys.
guys, it would have also like dated it, and because those are names that no one's thought about in sports for a long time because they both have done other things. But yeah, I think they would. I don't know. It just would have added something to it. But again, this movie's littered with cameos. It doesn't need more. I'm just saying, like I've noticed that because again, this whole movie, and this is what's interesting about it, is it's got all these characters in it and all this stuff going on, but it's all through Bell's lens. Like I don't think we ever walk away from him as the central focus of anything that's going on in the movie.
No, it's definitely his movie. And the movie also feels like it's kind of hung on the use of Nick Nolte as the star. Like he's still got some juice in '94, and they're trying to make like the most out of that.
Yeah, I think this is when the slide started. Like he did this, he had that nothing but trouble thing with Julia Roberts, and some other stuff, and then it just sort of that was it.
Yeah, that's the beginning of the end, I think, for Nick Nolte, because
The end of
but
being
it
the
was
leading guy. I mean, he's still in things, but he just became the caricature after this.
yeah, it's pretty funny to think about um this is such a prominent role for Nick Nolte, and the whole movie basically hangs on his besweatered shoulders,
Yes.
and how much stock they had and how much Nick Nolte stock someone had to make him the centerpiece of this movie over Shaquille O'Neal of all people,
Well, I don't
who
think
had
they knew at the time how big a deal Shaquille was going to be. I mean, he was a star, but he had only been in the NBA for like a couple of years at this point.
but hadn't he was already in the process of doing like Kazam, right?
I think that was in the works. Yeah, I mean, he was definitely doing other stuff besides just playing basketball, but again, nobody had really put him in front of the camera to see what he could do other than like post game stuff, and pops on TV and
And
commercials.
commercials, yeah.
Yeah, and then again, Penny. Nobody. I mean, people knew who Penny Hardaway was because he was a college basketball star and he was getting ready to go to the NBA, and they caught him in between. And like I said, just the wildest like bit of trivia about this that Shaq's like, no, I like this guy plays. Let's move our whole organization around and draft him instead of whoever else was available at that point because they had to trade picks to go get him.
Yeah, they had to get rid of Chris Webber. They
Yeah,
traded away Chris Webber to get him.
yeah. I mean, that actually kind of worked out, the way pros go, but.
But I will say that by this time this movie came out, Shaq had already had a platinum album
Oh, that's right. That's right.
and a gold album because I think the follow up uh came out in '94.
Yeah, he was. You're right. The thing. Well, and on the cover of it, I mean, it says Nolte and Shaq. Like on the poster, it's him dunking on some dude. I mean, they
Yeah.
sold it as Shaquille's movie right there, and he's not in it that much, and that's kind of wild because not that he couldn't have done it, but they don't really. I mean, he's in maybe 15 minutes of the whole thing.
I feel like if they do this movie now, you get a lot more Shaq.
Yeah, I think
Or not.
you probably cut the Ricky Rowe character completely at this point. But
Yeah, he doesn't really provide you a ton of stuff.
well, they don't do anything with him either. Like all you know about him is that Larry Bird knows who he is, and he's kind of like Larry Bird, and that he's a tall white kid who can shoot outside. And his dad wants a new tractor and has preference of which type of Baptist you are, and that's kind of it. That's all you really do. And Ricky likes girls, and that's what we know. That's all we get.
I mean, is there more going on behind Ricky's eyes than that? I can't
No,
really
I
think of
needed a
anything.
scene though where Tony pulled him aside and said, "Let me tell you about these girls here, bro." You know,
Yeah, no kidding.
because I don't think
Because
Ricky like got that kind of health education in
I,
French Lick or wherever he's from.
yeah, French Lick. Although I think they shot a lot of it in West Baden Springs, but it's fine. It's the same town.
Yeah.
But yeah, those girls would definitely eat Ricky alive.
Oh yeah, LA girls for sure. So I will say this though. I think what's fun is to watch Nolte and his. Well, you feel like he's telling on his coaches like we got to get out on the force and recruit and stuff, but he's the only one that ever goes anywhere because again nobody knows who these other three dudes are, so who cares? Except the one old guy who's clearly like been involved in a cheating scandal and survived somehow. Like he was on one of Patino's staffs or something.
Let's. All right. So the whole premise of this movie is once you get caught cheating, your career's dead. And
Yeah,
you have Jerry Tarkanian in there,
yeah,
the guy who got more second chances than he has hair follicles.
yeah.
I mean, come on. Clearly, it didn't hurt him that much because he came right back.
Yeah. I think it's supposed to be that the Pete Bell character is so morally opposed to the idea of cheating that even if they would let him come back, he wouldn't come back. And he doesn't. I mean, at the end of this movie, he goes and coaches high school ball, because he just can't live with himself anymore because he compromised himself in some way, which is so high and mighty and so also so 1990s.
Yeah, that's the thing that feels the least realistic about this movie because you don't become a major college coach and win national championships without being some kind of a scumbag
Right.
in one way or another, and just having a divorced wife that you're still friendly with is not nearly scumbaggy enough. And having
No.
some anger issues. I mean, Bob Knight whipped a player and he stuck around for 10 years after that. He hurled the chairs, he
Yeah.
did all that fun stuff, and nobody batted an eye.
I will say in that early basketball scene when Nolte is arguing with that ref and he starts doing that whole like umpire shaky, like it looked like a baseball thing, more like you see, a manager really showing out to let his team know that he's trying to fire him up. And he's
Yeah.
just red faced and, blowing his mind and his stack's about to go. I was like, man, Nolte is giving a performance there. Like that is a lot. And he says afterward, he said, if that's what it takes to rile these guys up, I don't think I can coach anymore. And I'm like, well, clearly he was just trying to get his guys riled up, but sheesh, man, that's a lot.
So, what kind of offense are they supposedly running at Western University? I couldn't
So
quite figure it out.
yeah, so there's a later discussion with that where Butch is like, "Let me be the point guard and work to the other four guys," and he's all like, "No, no, we don't do that here." They run like very much an old pick and roll, like 2-man game. I think where the pick guys is swinging out to be the three on the wing, and then you're dishing it inside. It's very much like what the Jazz ran with Malone and Stockton and all those guys. I think that's the kind of basketball that they're running because everybody else is fast breaking on them and whooping their ass doing it.
Yeah. Every other team is running like they're the 94 Wildcats with that Rick Pitino full court press just bombing down the court and they're running. I don't know, it's almost like
It's a half court offense, is all it is. And I think that's what
it's
they're
like
supposed to show is that Bell thinks his old way is still going to work with these newfangled pieces. And the only reason it does is because there's one of them is a physical freak, it's Shaq, because
Well,
nobody can guard him.
two of them, because you don't get a lot of 6'8" point guards.
Yeah, the Penny can move too. Yeah, he was smooth. So
Yeah, this is back when he was young and had both his knees.
yeah, well, it was like Magic Johnson when he came out. That's what everybody thought. Like this is the new Magic, because Magic's 6'6" or whatever, and he was a big guy to be playing point, and so everybody thought, oh, this is the new Magic Johnson. And for a while, when his knees were good, that wasn't a bad comparison. He played a lot like Magic.
Yeah, he really did.
Yeah.
It almost feels like they're running a little bit of that Bob Knight motion offense with all the talk about cutters and screening and
Oh yeah.
the back picks and stuff.
I was just saying, yeah, there's a lot of that pick and roll, cut, move, but it's all half court. It's a quarter court at a time. Like they're not throwing the ball all over the place. And I mean, you see whenever what's the little point guard? He's a coach now. It's gonna kill me.
Bobby Hurley.
Yeah, when you see Bobby Hurley's team roll out there, I mean, they're just dishing it left and right, and just, I mean, you can tell like those were the scenes when that team decided to take the actors to school and just, and over again it played basketball. Penny played, Shaq played, but they even like the behind the scenes stuff said, oh yeah, they beat the hell out of us. Like we had no idea what we were doing because they had real coaches and we had Nick Nolte. It was trying, but he didn't know what he was talking about.
That's the only thing that I missed was I kept waiting for Coach Nick Nolte to make up a fake player like Bobby Knight did once upon a time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, we got to talk about the way he recruits these three guys too, and sort of because those are like little vignette stories. So he goes to Chicago because he's told by shoe man Robert Wool to go. Butch McRae. You want Butch McRae because you watch him play. I mean, he can shoot outside. He can do everything. As Lou Gossett Jr. says, the boy can read and write too. He can actually take Tezzy. And when you meet Butch and you meet Alfre Woodard, who comes on this screen, and I mean, again, the one scene she's really in, she just slays. And he does that whole, like, they play basketball in the living room of the apartment or whatever. And they go for a little walk. And she's basically laying out like the terms of his, agreement. And I love what the last little bit of their interaction. He goes like, you taking shortcuts and bribes, what is your son going to grow up to be? And she just looks him dead in the face and says, I don't know, a millionaire. And it's like, wow, hey, you're not wrong.
Yeah, that was definitely a great moment for her. And she's one of the many people who shows up for like one scene in this movie and just kills it in her one scene. Or like she's got two scenes.
Yeah, the next one, I think she's pulling a sign out of the yard, whatever in California where they get to the job, but you don't ever see her again after that.
It's in Chicago. She got a big job in Chicago.
Oh, okay. I thought they moved her out to LA. Oh, that's right, because he is homesick. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, no, she's still in Chicago because you can tell when they go to her office that's the Chicago skyline she's looking at. From her very nice office.
She probably went to work for Ferris Bueller's dad at whatever ad agency he worked for.
Yeah.
So
she's the personal assistant to Abe Froman, the Sausage King of Chicago.
There we go. That's what him and Happy went to college together. Like they're fraternity brothers.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. So you see that. We go out to French Lick, Indiana. We get Larry Bird, out there, of course, for his cameo. And we go see Ricky Rowe, who's just shooting hoops on the farm like Jimmy Chitwood, but, a lot taller and somewhat more verbose, but not a lot. And I don't know that, again, like that's the one character in this that I felt like they started to do things with him. And then, when they bring him out for the official visit and he's doing the shoot around and stuff, and he starts laying out terms of what he wants, and Belle freaks out at him. That seems so ill-placed because Belle's dad had already kind of laid out, like, this is what it's going to cost. I mean, Ricky Rowe's dad had already laid out, this is what it's going to cost to get this kid. I just felt that was a weird placement for when Belle kind of lost his mind on Ricky at the recruitment side.
I think maybe it was the fact that Ricky approached him directly and said, this is exactly what I want. Put cash in the bag. And I think that's what he had the problem with, because he no longer had plausible deniability of like, well, I'm not in control of what Happy does.
Yeah, good point. Yeah. You pick up the phone, you do the thing. And I love when when Butch is having the homesick thing and he does pick up and it's just JT Walsh on the phone, just losing his mind. You tell that kid to, and all this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, they probably didn't bend to heaven and earth to get him there. So I get it. And what's funny about that, Ron, is people always said like, yo, that's the hell of letting all this under the table recruiting happen and all this kind of stuff. And that's why you need to pay these dudes. And I'm looking at today's stuff and I'm like it's any different now. Like that's the same problems, even if it is, supposedly above the board now.
Yeah, I feel like these days Ricky would have gotten an NIL, I don't know, a sponsorship from the local Hooters franchise.
Right.
And of course, Neon would just have his own chain of Chef Neon
Yeah.
burger joints and restaurants.
Yeah, let's talk about the neon sequence down in New Orleans and Algiers is the wildest little vignette in this, because it's like Bell's at his restaurant, bar, whatever, and doing his little show, and this dude just walks up to him and says, "Hey man, I got a guy you need to go see. He's down in New Orleans." He's like, "Oh really? Okay, cool." So they leave the fake Patty O'Brien's that Bell owns, and they go to run through the swamp, and we got the music going and all this stuff, and you go and you see Neon in like the dungeoniest dungeon gym out that you could possibly get, where he is dunking on these people. Like, again, they put actors on the screen that had played basketball, and then they just put Shaq out there and he said, go and face plant all these dudes. And he just killed every one of them.
Yeah. I kept waiting for Kevin Bacon from the air up there to show up and like stare goggle-eyed at Neon as he does all these crazy dunks.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Like, I know, like, this guy, didn't go to school. He was an army brat, all this stuff. And there's no way a freaking nature like that would remain a secret, particularly to the Southeastern Conference. That LSU, as they were for Shaq, would have been all over that dude.
Yeah, that's the biggest stretch. I feel like if you reach, I don't know, 6'8", every college coach in the country gets like an immediate message from your doctor saying, "Hey, he's 6'8". You should give him a call, whether he can play basketball or not."
Yeah, you think he would just be on somebody's radar, and I know they try to play it off as like, oh, he failed the tests or whatever, he can't get in. And
that stopped anybody ever from playing college basketball.
You have Bell and Nolte is doing something here that's very real. People don't remember this anymore. Prop 48's a very real thing. Like, I knew two guys in my high school that got to college on Prop 48. Like, I mean, they basically went JUCO for a couple of years, and then they transferred and they both got degrees, and good for them. It was what it was built for guys that weren't good test takers, maybe didn't have the best schooling coming up, maybe to account for some of the problems in standardized testing. But it was built for guys that deserved a chance, that were just like right there. It wasn't built for dudes like Neon who are sandbagging because they're trying to make some sort of statement about it or whatever, which is funny because I love how Shaquille O'Neal like has all these principles, but all of a sudden you just pay him a couple bucks. He's like, yeah, sure. Okay, whatever.
It looks like he's playing on one of those courts you get at like NBA Street, or like one of those crazy, like, this is a basketball court where people would never play in reality, but here we go. There's like alligators on the sidelines with pom-poms.
Well, but the thing is, like, I don't even think it's the money that's the motivator. And I mean, to make it sound like that, his whole motivation is that Jenny basically dares him into going like, well, I think you're just sandbagging and you can't really do it because you're trying to hide. And he goes like, oh, fine, then I'll do it. And he does it anyway, because she's trying to help him study, which is, I mean, him and Mary McDonald have like a real funny couple scenes together, which I think is funny. Because when she finally meets back up with Belle, she's like, he just needed a tutor. He needs a swift kick in the ass, to get his attitude right.
Yeah. And she's one of the better elements, I think, of this movie, because it's clear she cares about the players as people.
Yeah.
In a similar way that he does, but like kind of more so, because her like livelihood isn't wrapped up in whether or not these guys can, hit threes and play man-to-man defense.
Well, that's a good question. I wanted to ask you this because Belle is obsessed with the idea that if I don't put a winner on the court, they're going to fire me. And I didn't get a sense from Bob Cousy's AD position that he was going to fire him at all, because when he's trying to cover up all the corruption in the rest of his athletics that's clearly rampant at this point, I didn't get a sense he was on the hot seat at all. That was just media talk. And it was almost all in his own head that they were going to get rid of him. He was like, you don't get rid of the guy that won you 3 titles, man. Not in those days.
Oh, yeah, you do.
You think?
After an extended period of mediocrity, like, I can only come at this from a Kentucky perspective, and I know that,
Yeah.
you know, we have a Hall of Fame coach right now for our basketball team, and people want him gone because the team hasn't won a national championship, and the team has been struggling in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, it's like that whole like embarrassment of riches when you get so good that you can't be done. But that what I'm saying is
Yeah, like
we
we had
we we
like
hadn't gotten there
Kentucky.
with Bell. This is only like his third bad season in a row. It wasn't. I mean, now granted, it 5 more of them, and he probably would be, but I don't think he was on the hot seat now. And I think he thought he was, and that's what sort of pushed him into these bad decisions.
But I feel like there's going to be some lingering stink from the point shaving.
Well, that's what I'm gonna ask you. Like they don't tell enough about that. I think like they explain it and they drop it, and then they get him to like strong arm Tony into admitting it. But I needed like some Stephen Headache Smith like game film of that going down. Like I wanted to
No,
see that.
they do show the game film because he's watching it with the coaches and he's breaking it down. He's like, well, he kind of just let the ball go there
Yeah, but like,
and like dribbled it off his knee.
but how did they not notice like that he was playing shitty before? Did they just dismiss it that he's having a shitty night instead of he's actually faking it? You know?
No, he scored 25 points.
Okay.
But when the he was getting past the spread, that's when he started to make some goofy turnovers and, you know, play like a freshman.
Right, right. But and again, and in the real one, like in Headache's case, his coach pulled him out, and that's what screwed up their whole like thing. Is he wasn't in the game to control it anymore? And you think they would have been like, let's sit Tony down. Like it's 3 turnovers in a row, that's enough. I needed more of that so that we could get why it was so scary for him to realize that this had happened on his watch and he wasn't aware of it. Because Bell's one of
Well,
those guys that's like total in control all the time, you know.
I'm pretty sure Tony wasn't the only one involved with it.
Ah, good
Happy
point.
makes it pretty clear that he bought Tony and he probably owns the rest of the team too.
Yeah.
But also, like, who would they have played other than Tony? Because it's clearer from the fact that they were, a 500 ball club that season that they didn't have a lot of other options. I mean, you're not going to bench your one good player just because he has a bad spell, unless you're John Calipari.
I was gonna say real coaches would, but no, you're right. You're not wrong. I'm just looking. I guess I was looking at it from a. It was another one of these like dangling threads of movie line here that I felt like that would have been a good couple of episodes of the season to know instead of we have to spend like 7 minutes on it and just sort of blow through it so that we can spend time doing other goofy things.
I feel like in the 2 hour cut of this movie that there's that stuff is still there.
I wonder. Yeah, supposedly, like the original cut was like 3 hours or something.
Of
of
course
course,
it
freaking
was.
yeah. So,
Yeah. That wouldn't surprise me at all. And the fact that they were able to get it down to like 108 minutes is kind of amazing because,
mhm.
you know, I think we all know enough about movies to know how Friedkin shoots and yeah, I don't know. I didn't really care about the point shaving because these days, like every team has a gambling sponsor. So what's the
Well,
big
yeah,
deal?
right. Yeah, which is wild to think about, right? Is that look how far we've come in the 20, 30 years since this movie was made, and now everything is sponsored by FanDuel. You know, look, I was in North Carolina recently, and it's like my phone got taken over by the fact that FanDuel is now live in North Carolina. Like every third post on social media was about that. I was like, holy
Yep.
cow, man.
I've been getting it since sports gaming was made legal here.
Yeah.
Actually, it started like 3 months before the law became the law
Oh wow.
in the lead up, and they were like $250 free dollars. I was actually talking about a guy today when I was getting lunch. I was like, man, he was like, we were talking about the basketball, and I was talking about how it's like, I'll have basketball on 3 or 4 different screens. And he's like, yeah, and all of my friends are going to be on FanDuel. And we talked about it's like, yeah, that's too much temptation for me. He
Yeah.
was like, he said to me like, I don't need to know that how easy it is to gamble from my pocket.
No, SNL recently did a great segment with Shane Gillis on that was like you could bet against your friend like blowing his entire like life away or
Yeah.
whatever with gambling. I was like, we're not far. Like it's the Running Man. It was prophetic in a lot of ways. We're almost there.
Now I will say you can make some good money gambling on basketball, or you could back in the '80s, but you would make even better money being the bookie. My uncle was a bookie for a while in the '80s and early '90s.
Oh wow. Okay, so you know
Just
firsthand.
just for fun. Yeah, he was always getting had a big legal pad, and he'd always have the odds for the games, and would always be getting phone calls from his regulars that were like, "We'll put $50 on game X," and that kind of stuff, and
maybe
parlays and whatnot.
I kind of feel like if any character got really cut apart, it was the Ed O'Neill character, where we should have had moments of him going to talk to people like that, who knew, and that's how he was fine. Like there needed to be more of him hot on the trail, so that Bell was not only feeling it from his conscience, but was feeling it from the over-involved booster, from his wife, asking him lying to her, to also this reporter's asking everybody under the sun, is doing all the work to figure this stuff out.
We should have seen him talking to Lou Gossett Jr. We should have seen him talking to people in French Lick. We should have seen him sniffing around that fixer who got him in touch with Neon.
Yeah. I mean, all he's doing is he has that one scene with the guy at the fax machine where he kind of lays out how he thinks they all got bought, which is how we all know they got bought because we've seen the movie or we're watching the movie at this point. But I would have loved to have seen him going and running all that down. And then like that guy would have been in Bell's office waiting on him, just sitting in there going like, I got a few questions for you, Pete, and like it would have dogged him the whole time instead of just waiting for the press conference to drop it on him.
Or like even better, hassling Bob Cousy.
Yeah, that would have been another one. Yeah. Again, if Blue Chips was like 3 seasons on FX, it would be sweatier, but it would also somehow, but this would all have happened, I think.
If they did make this a TV show, Jay, it would get shut down almost immediately by the NCAA, just kind of like how the NFL got their claws in ESPN and got them to shut down playmakers.
Good point. Yeah, I can see that. So, do you remember there was a show too? Well, I think ESPN is the reason Sports Night got canceled. I'll always believe that, that was an incredible show because it was way too close to home for what was going on. But that's some good TV if you want to go back and find 90s TV and stuff. Some Josh Charles action for you there, kids.
What was it, like 6 episodes? And
I think it was a little bit more, but it wasn't much. Yeah, it was pretty quick. So, I'll give you the other thing about this movie too. Like, there's some good needle drops throughout. Like Jeff Beck and Niles Rogers are doing some fun stuff in this movie, man. Like they're just having like a little jam session over there the whole time. It's actually pretty good. I like it. It's one thing I like about 90s movies. Like they would just get these rock and pop stars and just put them in the studio and just let them hang out. Usually with Michael Kamen, who was probably busy doing a Lethal Weapon movie at this point. But it's that same kind of vibe as the Sanborn, Clapton, Kamen, Lethal Weapon stuff.
Yeah, it's the very much, and no offense to Nile Rodgers, but it's very much white guy blues.
Yes, yeah.
Which is fitting because they're in Chicago and they're in Louisiana, which is big blues country.
Yeah,
and
then it goes Indiana, out to LA and it gets poppy.
Yeah, and Indiana kind of gets a pass because I guess Gary.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Though I think Detroit had more to do with the Jacksons than Gary, Indiana did, but it's another day. Do I like the music though? I'll tell you what really got me. I think always gets me in the mood for this is the little pep band in the opening, and apparently they were like a high school pep band. And I thought, holy cow, they were good. Man, they were
they were supplemented with a couple of professionals apparently, but
yeah,
you can only supplement so much.
Yeah, I mean the percussion is what I think where you can hear it. It's like wow, but this one thing that is definitely unique to college basketball is the band in the corner. If the gym's set up right and they're really kicking out, like you can really feel it. And Freakin knew one thing. He'd watched enough college basketball to know like you got to capture that St. Mary's, St. John's, Big East, all that Northeast basketball, Knicks, all the people playing in the Garden, all that stuff in a movie that will appeal to a wide audience. Now it didn't for a number of reasons, but I think the idea is right to have that kind of band in the opening to really get you kicked off.
Yeah, and it's they did a good job with the pep music, and I really liked the fight song for the Western University.
Yeah, it's a pretty like kicking little song. Like it feels like part of the ESPN theme, but also like generic theme number 4 from NCAA basketball 02 or whatever. If you play the old PlayStation or PlayStation 2 game, the 2 probably had the better music, but yeah.
I still have NCAA 14, which is the last one they made
Oh, nice. Yeah, with the
Xbox with Blake Griffin on the cover.
oh wow, yeah, that one's a valuable piece right there, my friend. So because they don't make those anymore for sure. So I have the last. They only made a couple of them. It's on the PS2, the NCAA baseball game.
Oh yeah,
Which is good. That's a good. I don't even have a working PS2 anymore, but I'm just hanging on to that. So if I ever get one again, I can play that game.
I would figure out a way to get John Thompson in the movie somehow.
Yeah, that'd been
Just
nice.
just carried around the towel.
Yeah,
It's kind of a distinctive look for him. I feel like you missed out by not getting him. Should have got Nolan Richardson.
yeah. There are no black coaches at all. Like that's
Got to get at least one.
that was a little conspicuous, even in the '90s.
The thing I feel like we need the least is the ex-wife, estranged wife plot line.
Mm-hmm. He
I
didn't
mean,
need
it's not.
another guilty conscience, you know.
No, he should have been. He should have been guilty enough from his own, mistakes
Mm-hmm.
for the basketball purposes. We didn't need it to be like. We didn't need that in addition to the basketball guilt. Here's some more guilt for you.
I think if you pop her in to do the neon part about the tutoring thing, and then she just is gone, and not that I'm trying to reduce Mary McDonald's role because there's no women in this movie at all, but this is a basketball movie about men's basketball, so I'm not going to feel bad about that. But if you just drop her in for that and then she's gone, I'm good with that because I don't need, again, I'm with you. I don't need her to be the other guilty conscience to make him feel like shit because he's cheating now, you know?
Yeah. Um, I also feel like an any given Sunday kind of situation might work where he's just straight up divorced and living in a nice apartment and getting lots of hookers.
Yeah. I
That
think the
that
Saved by the
seems.
Bell kids were still on Saved by the Bell at this point, though, so they couldn't be the hookers. uh, can I tell you one thing I would change too? And this is like a wild idea. I would have loved it if they lost to Indiana. Like he did all of this and he still lost, and that is another reason he goes up there and is like, why the hell are we cheating? We can't even cheat and win. Like that would have been like a nice twist. I know you don't do that in sports movies, but I don't know. I kind of would have dug that.
I feel like maybe Shaq might have had something to do with that.
Yeah, I'm sure Shaq was like, I'm not going down.
I'm not gonna lose the I'm not gonna lose the Bowie night.
Because he lost to him in the real
No,
fight in
the
the real
Bowie night
tournament.
again.
And I think he was like, no, we're not doing that again.
I'm gonna talk to my pal Billy Freakin. Can you dig it?
I can only imagine Billy freaking trying to just look straight up at the sky to talk just kill him, and give him like acting tips. Okay, bro. Like every time he says that in the movie, I feel like he's just talking to William Freaking. Sure, bro. Whatever. Yeah. Well, we're at the point of the podcast, Ron, where it's time to give final thoughts, recommendations, and popcorn ratings. So, what are yours for Blue Chips?
Blue Chips is very much a half-baked movie. I feel like they spent $35 million on it, and I'm not sure like where a lot of that money went. I mean, the basketball scenes look good. They're very entertaining. There's some nice stuff with Shaq, who is even at this young age is still clearly going to be a star, a big deal. But I feel like we've touched on a lot of the flaws and a lot of the stuff that doesn't work. And ultimately, it all kind of hangs on how you feel about Nick Nolte as Coach Bell. I like Nick Nolte and I like the character. I feel like having actual Bobby Knight show up is a step too far to me because it's like, oh, well, this is clearly the thing he's doing. He's doing Bobby Knight, and here's the real deal. No makeup on, looking irritated, yelling at Bobby Hurley. Like, he should have just maybe followed Bobby Knight around for a while and gotten something. But all I have to say is it moves fairly well. Nothing really stays around too long to overstay its welcome. A lot of the elements that we talked about that don't work, and probably could have been cut. You could have probably had a really good 90-minute movie, or even better, like an 87-minute movie. But you know, I have fun for this movie just because I've watched it so often. So I'm going to go with a medium popcorn.
I agree with a lot of what you said there, and I think the thing is this movie spends time on people and things that it doesn't need to spend time on, and doesn't spend enough time with the ones that it should. And specifically, Mary McDonald and Matt Nover don't need to be as big a parts in this movie as they are. They should have spent more time with JT Walsh and Penny and Shaq. Because they're way more interesting and way more fun, and clearly know what kind of movie they're in. And Nolte does too. To his credit, this is a hell of a performance. Like he is giving it everything he's got. I mean, I don't think he's trying to win an Oscar. I think he's trying to give a. I want people to not think of me as the cop in 48 Hours. I want them to think of me as a basketball coach, and he does a really good Bobby Knight impression in a lot of ways. And I'm not talking about even the caricature stuff. He sounds like a basketball coach.
Yeah, he really does. But a fun game we should do for this movie is we should recast Pete Bell as someone not Nick Nolte.
Ooh.
And then do a little reading in the style of this person we're going to cast.
Well,
hold Pete Bell.
Hold that thought, because I'm going to join you in that medium popcorn first to do that, because I do think this movie goes down easy enough. And if the parts of it you're not interested in, you can just get up and walk out of the room or ignore it, fast forward, whatever you want. It's good. I'm with you. There's 90 minutes inside of this almost 2-hour movie that would be supreme. Or there's like 4 seasons of a hell of a television show that could be in this movie, but there's no in between.
And I feel like if they were going to do this now with Nick Nolte, it would be a 4-season TV show.
Oh, for sure.
If they did this in 2010 with like a older, wizened, hanging on by the skin of his teeth coach.
Yeah,
with Nick Nolte even as the coach then.
Oh yeah, I think you're dead on. It would be way more interesting. The problem is you can't make this anymore, because one, this NCAA doesn't exist anymore, and neither does this kind of college athletics or the way we think about it, or even over moralize about it anymore. And so that's why this is such an interesting time capsule to think about. And there's a lot of different basketball movies, but no lie, I don't think we were going to break out here and do Eddie or Air Bud as we were getting into March Madness. It was fun talking about blue chips. I'm on the medium popcorn train too, but you're right. And I didn't skip the segment because I knew we were going here. So what if William Shatner was Coach Bell? Ron, please do tell what that would sound and look like.
Boys, the rules don't make much sense, but I believe in the rules. Some of us broke them. I broke them. I can't do this. I can't win like this.
Bravo, sir. Bravo. Well done.
And of course, there's also the alternate Al Pacino take. Because, Dwayne, you can get through college half-assed. Richard, you can get through life half-assed. But I'll guarantee you boys one thing. Sure as hell, I'll guarantee you this. You cannot win half-assed. You got to use your whole ass. And it's a great one.
A bonus tonight here. I love it. A Pacinoing of blue chips. You can see Pacino in this. Pacino would be a wild basketball. He's very Patino type basketball.
Yeah, coach, like a somehow even greasier Rick Pitino.
Which is hard to imagine, but it does exist somehow. So because Patino still exists and he's still greasy
with his olive oil voice and guinea charm, as they say in the Godfather. About Johnny Fontaine.
Yes. Well, Ron, tell folks what you've got going on over at Den of Geek right now. All the cool stuff you're covering.
Well, you will see me talking a lot about The Walking Dead, The Ones Who Live. It's the newest spinoff in the Walking Dead universe, the newest continuation of the original OG series, and it's probably the best one. I enjoyed both the other shows, which I do talk about some on Den of Geek if you liked The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon, or The Walking Dead The City of the Dead, the Maggie and Negan spinoff. But so far the best one has been The Ones Who Live, the Rick and Michonne centric spinoff, and the episode that is coming out tonight as we record this is a banger because it's a really interesting bit of, well, just go and read the review and you'll find out what I think about it and why I think it's interesting.
Absolutely. You can follow all of that on Ron's socials at Hollywood Ron. And of course, just you follow the at Film Strip Pod account on Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram. We try to repost all that stuff there. Of course, that's how you can also follow the show, all the cool stuff that we've got going on. Ron and I both made appearances recently on Tis the Podcast as guest hosts. So yeah, we both got to talk about a couple of different things, which was fun. And then I'm going to be in an upcoming episode of Schlock and Awe with Lindsay again, which was a lot of fun. Got to talk a couple of fun movies with her, and then got some more fun stuff coming up in the near future, as always. And for those wondering, Lindsay is alive. She is just recovering from her time on stage and getting things together, but she'll be back with us very soon. And I will be continuing my ongoing Star Trek reviews with our friend Nate in March. Here we're going to get Star Trek 3 out, the Search for Spock, as it's called, which will be a lot of fun.
I think you mean The Search for Spock.
Yes, very good. I have a fun story as to why I almost misenabled it, but you have to listen to that show to get it. And then our friend Anthony and I are going to continue our Change My Movie Mind debate show, and our next one is going to be This Movie Can Never Be Remade, and we're going to debate a couple of different options for that. We had a fun one talking about when we thought Oscars got the Best Picture wrong, and then arguing whose filmography is less awful, I guess, Rob Zombie and Zack Snyder. But we're going to continue this on as we get them. Have a lot of fun with our guest judges, and of course, a lot of fun hanging out with y'all here on Film Strip Maine. As always, we'll be back for the new show very soon. Until next time, for Ron, I'm Jay. Thank you for listening to Film Strip.
Thank you for listening to Film Strip. You can find more episodes on our website, filmstrippodcast.com. The Film Strip theme music is produced and performed by Frozen Lake 121. All content used or discussed in these podcast episodes is the property of the respective owners and used under the Fair Use Act, Section 504, C2, Title 17.